Today, I'm joined by Chris Landers, who has been overseeing production and leading the charge in all things related to air cannons. With 25 years of experience in the air cannon industry, he's here to talk about the IGS AirCannon Multiplier System and how it can benefit cement plants and more. Chris, can you walk us through how the AirCannon Multiplier System works? What sets it apart from traditional air cannons?
Just to give a little history, air cannons have really been in use in industry since the 1970s, and they've pretty much stayed the same the whole time. Your car is different than it was in the 70s. Your TV is different than it was in the 70s. So why not change the way air cannons are used and applied? So for 50 years, you put an air cannon right where you had a blast port or a nozzle where you wanted to move material. So let's say you had a wall where you were going to have eight air cannons mounted right on the nozzle. Well, with the multiplier system, you have one air cannon that feeds, we'll say 8, but it can be any number, feeds those 8 ports in manifold system. Now, when people see it, they go, oh, a manifold, well, you're cutting your blast by 8 every time it fires, but that's not how it works. Each valve in the manifold, we call it a multiplier, is controlled by an air cylinder and has a steel plate on it that seals off that port. So they're all closed. And when you want to fire one, let's say the 5th one, that one port opens and the cannon fires into the manifold and goes out that port. So you're still getting the blast of one air cannon, not dividing it, but you're only using one air cannon to feed all 8 in the manifold. Also, and one of the things that people balked at first was traditionally you mounted the cannon right on the nozzle, and everyone said, well, you have to do that to maintain the power of the blast. But we've proven through testing and applications that we can remotely mount the air cannon by using a bigger volume, by improving the nozzles, which improve the blast. We've proven that we can move the air cannon further away from the blast port and still maintain the cleaning and material moving power of the.
How does the multiplier system improve cleaning efficiency in places like cement towers or boiler tubes?
Yeah. Well, the way it works, as I've kind of touched on, you have one air cannon that feeds a bank of these multiplier systems. The multiplier, each one has an air cylinder on it with a steel plate that covers up the port. So they're all closed off. And then when you want to fire one, you open that one port, the air cannon blast goes into the manifold and goes out that one port. Now we've proven that it's not necessarily the peak force of your air cannon, which we have peak force, a very high one, but volume also is very important. So we use a larger air tank than most of our competitors. So we have more, I guess, cleaning energy. Obviously, the more air going in there, the more material you can move. So that's one way we do it. But also, the best cleaning ability is maintainability. So our air cannons are very simple, and the multiplier is very, very simple. So it rarely requires any maintenance. But anything that needs to be done to the air cannon is in a safe, easy to get to place.
Can you share a real-world example where the AirCannon Multiplier System made a big difference in operations?
There's been a lot of success, but 2 big ones. There's a cement plant that has a vertical crusher, which not all plants have, but all of them have some kind of crusher. And they had this ductwork leading into it, and it filled up with rock bigger than a balled up fist. And they had to manually clean it once a week, 2 guys, 5 hours once a week. And it's not an easy access. It was not an easy thing to do. So we put in a multiplier system with 2 multipliers. We put it a floor above the thing because there was an empty floor there with no obstructions. So we just put it up there, ran the piping down to these 2 nozzles, each fed by a multiplier, and it eliminated the manual cleaning for them. And they're ecstatic about it. It not only eliminated, 2 guys 5 hours a week, it also improved their efficiency dramatically, and there was so much destruction from all that rock that they were having to replace a lot of the mechanical parts of the ductwork and the mill, and it has saved them a bunch of money on that. And then another one in a power plant, they had a row of individual cannons, and they put in a multiplier system with our nozzles, like one 300-liter 8-inch cannon feeding 8 nozzles, and you can't see into the process over their catalyst. So when they went down, I went up there to see how it went, and the guy said, I walked in, and usually we have about 4 feet of ash built up. He goes, we didn't have any ash, just a layer of it. And we usually have 4 vacuum trucks here for 5 weeks to vacuum out all the ash when we're down. And this time we have 1 truck here, and it was here 1 week, and it was a $320,000 savings for them.
What are some of the key benefits, Chris, when it comes to energy savings and lower maintenance costs?
Well, because let's say we're using 8 multipliers, that would place 8 individual air cannons. So the upfront cost is less. A multiplier unit itself costs a lot less than an individual cannon. So you're purchasing 1 air cannon versus 8, and you're maintaining 1 air cannon versus 8. So obviously there's savings in that. And then also every air cannon over time can develop small air leaks. And again, for 50 years, everyone plumbed air straight to their air cannon 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you develop a very tiny leak and you have 150 air cannons with little leaks in them, you're losing a lot of air, which is very expensive in a plant, compressed air. So with 1 cannon versus 8, you've reduced your potential leaks drastically. And then also, we do something a little different than has been done traditionally. We tell you to add a solenoid valve and only fill the air tank 1 minute before you're going to fire. That way, there's no reason to have basically a pressurized bomb sitting there all day. And so our tank we leave empty, and then you fill it. So even if it did develop a tiny leak, you're only leaking for 1 minute every time you're blasting. So that can result in some huge savings for a plant.
Finally, Chris, are there any exciting new advancements in air cannon tech you're seeing, and how do they make these systems even better?
Yeah, well, one, and it goes a little bit back to that multiplier system, sorry, but we developed most air cannons are 4-inch firing assemblies or smaller. And we have an 8-inch cannon. It generates 5 times the power, and we use at least double the volume. And that allows us to do 2 things. One, we can cover great distances with it. And so with the cannon has to be really far away from the ports and the multipliers, we can overcome that distance easily. And it also, some plants have used it as almost like a variable power air cannon. They'll run it at a lower PSI, compressed air, and that's their normal. But then if something happens to the process and they have a big blockage, they can turn it up. Let's say you run at 60 PSI, well, all of a sudden you can turn it up to 85, and it's just like stepping on the accelerator. All of a sudden we're going to drive 90 miles an hour. So it gives them that option to do that. Now the other stuff, we have a monitoring system we can put on that can monitor any air cannons, but also the multiplier system, so you can get immediate feedback if there's a problem. Your control room will say, oh, well, that something didn't open correctly, or the air pressure didn't look right. We need to go investigate that. And it's an easy thing, but most plants don't have anything like that.
Great stuff. Thank you, Chris, for your time today. I'm sure we'll have more to discuss next time. For our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about the IGS AirCannon Multiplier System and other air cannons, visit our new website at www.igsaircannons.com. Until next time, this is John, your host of the Efficiency and Reliability Podcast.